Right. Check. Welcome once again, guys. Welcome once again. It is Friday. This is time for, I'm just so you guys know, I'm also putting this out on a podcast. So many of you guys are watching this live on YouTube Live. It's also available on all of your podcast locations, iTunes, other places. So this is the Jesse Coomer podcast. And this is also where the tribe gets together. There's always a lot of names that I see over here in the chat box. A lot of questions. I've already got a great question I'm going to get to in a little bit that is about CO2 tolerance and autonomic nervous system training and all this great stuff. So I'm really excited to have that question, and we'll be getting to that in just a little bit. For those of you guys who are in the Patreon club, I want to thank you guys for making this possible. If you're not in the Patreon club, please head over to patreon.com/Midwestern Method. Yes, I still use and so for many of you guys, you may not be that used to be the name of the channel, and that used to be the name of pretty much everything that I did. And then I was like, you know what? I am who I am. I'm me. I'm not trying to push, some kind of a method. I don't know. I may come back to that name though. I'm still using it here and there. But if you would like to join the tribe, I want to make Breathwork available for everybody. And it's a really, really awesome tribe. It's growing more and more now. And I'm really excited that it's people from all over the world. People from pretty much every country you can imagine is part of the Patreon Breathwork, the Breath Club. And there are different levels that you can join in different tiers. But if you just want to join at the lowest tier, the cool thing is you get access to my entire catalog of pre-recorded breathwork sessions, and I add to it every month. And it's getting pretty massive actually right now. So there's hours and hours and hours of pre-recorded breathwork sessions using various techniques. Actually, this past, and then also every month we also do a live breathwork session. And that's normally whenever I start to experiment with, the things that I'm messing with. I'm still learning a lot. I'm always digging into books and digging into more breath. There's so much, guys. I wrote my book, A Practical Guide to Breathwork. Actually, it's almost been a year since I published that book. I'm really excited. Sold thousands of copies around the world. Very, very, very grateful, full of gratitude to everybody who's purchased one of those. But I'm still learning, and there's all kinds of stuff that is out there to learn. And so this past month, I led Sudarshan Kriya. That was our live session. And the nice thing is, if you're in the Breathwork Club and the Breath Club, you can access the recordings to those anytime. So even if you join late. So nice to have you all here. Today, we're going to be talking about something that is very near and dear to my heart. And I think it's really an important time to talk about it. But just real quick before we get started, if you have questions, please feel free to throw them into the comments. I will get to every question that I possibly can. And then, of course, super chats are open. If you just want me to skip right to your question, I'd be happy to do that. Oh, no, Papa Geek's here. No conversions to Fahrenheit and Celsius. Nice to have you here, my friend. And thanks so much for your comment there. So today, the big topic, as you can see from the title of today's talk, is what is the modern human condition? And actually, this is something that people are starting to get a little bit more handle on more and more as the years go by. And recently, there's a book that recently came out. Brett Weinstein wrote recently a book about it, and he was talking about it on a podcast that I was listening to. And I'm like, hey, man, I've been talking about this for a while. I'm not the first person to bring this up. We've started to know this as a species for quite some time. But I want to start with a quote from Robert Frost. So some of you guys know that I'm by day, I am a lowly English professor. By night, I am a breathworker, and also by day as well. But Robert Frost, there's a quote of his, and it was essentially that ultimately and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't remember it word for word, but ultimately that the thing that will eventually kill humanity is modernity. Essentially, it is civilization. It is the thing that we keep striving for as a species that ultimately will be our own demise. And this is something that when we talk about this, I think a lot of times people get really polarized and they say, well, hey, are you saying we should go back and live in the caves? Are you saying that, look at all these awesome things that modernity have brought us? Are you saying we shouldn't drive cars or fly in airplanes and all of these things? And that's not necessarily what I'm saying. And that's not necessarily what I think ultimately the issue of the modern human condition is. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, in literature and art, so in literature and art, there is a concept known as the human condition. And some of you guys may be aware of this, the human condition. And this is what makes art, music, literature, this is what makes all of these things so beautiful to us, because the human condition is what we share with all other people on the planet. It's these hopes and desires and the fears and the passions and all these things that come with being a human being. We call it the human condition. And you can go back into the very first Sumerian texts. You can go back to the Epic of Gilgamesh, if you're familiar with that. It's one of the oldest texts that's known to man, one of the oldest stories ever written. And you can look at the relationship between Gilgamesh and Enkidu, and these two guys, they start off, and I'm not going to tell the whole story, but it was originally they fought, and then they became great friends. And there's all these emotional states that we can relate to as human beings thousands and thousands of years ago. But then now we can still relate to them, even to this modern day. And that's the human condition. And so when I say the modern human condition, I'm talking about something a little bit different. I am talking about something that we all share, but I'm talking about something that we all share as modern individuals. And this is something that I don't think almost all of human history can share with us. We don't share this. And John, I'll get to your comment, to your question here in just a minute. I want to give you guys an update on that in just a minute. Actually, I talked about it on my last podcast, but I'll definitely talk about that on this podcast, because I'm still not sure how I'm going to get to that. But getting back to my point, and then please, guys, feel free to give me questions, comments, etc. We can talk about that in just a minute. But I want to get this thought out. I want to get this thought out of my head and into the world. And of course, I talk about this in my book, but I want to talk about it a little bit right now, because I think people are starting more than any other time to start to realize this. It's that there is a disconnection between the programming, between the adaptations that we as a species, as a human species, possess, and the outside world, the world around us. There is this disconnection, and it's causing us problems. And modernity has caused us all sorts of wonderful things, right? It's the reason why we don't have, like, for instance, one of the greatest things about modernity is childbearing. There's a woman in my Patreon club, the Breath Club, and she's pregnant, and so we're talking back and forth. And hey, if you're watching, I am going to make another breathing session on the Patreon club. She's asking about certain breathing techniques, maybe for nausea and things like that. We're going to do that for you. But it's one of those things where that was a huge reason why the mortality rates were so low in ancient times, because it was one of the most dangerous things, giving birth and being born, right? Just simply being born was, you were taking a big risk with your life, just beginning your life. And so there's all sorts of wonderful things that have come with modernity. However, we see more and more issues of modernity. And I think the biggest one is that I think everyone can visually see. We can obviously see. I don't think it's controversial to say that we have a disconnection between our eating habits and our physiology. And this comes back to the fact that we're programmed from, and we talked about this on a previous podcast. I'm not going to go great into depth with this again, but we're programmed to seek out calories and to seek out specific macronutrients. So because they're normally associated with certain micronutrients, and also because our species for the longest time, I mean, we're talking, thousands and thousands and thousands of years, was used to starving. Like we had a problem with starving to death. And literally the game of life was just don't die of starvation. And then a whole list of things that the modern human does not have to worry about so much anymore. So we have we have this internal programming, and modernity has advanced so much faster than our biological, adaptations. And there's this disconnection. And I think, of course, I recently I became a certified nutrition coach through the, there's a few, I'm just going to go ahead and celebrate a few things. I did recently become a nutrition coach through the National, the National Academy of Sports Medicine. And then also today is the 5th birthday of my YouTube channel. Today, I had no idea. This day clicks by. Here it is. Today is September 17th, 2021. And I guess 5 years ago to the day, I uploaded my very first YouTube video. So happy birthday to the channel. Thank you guys for everybody that's here and who has stuck with me. And thank you for everybody who's got a question and who's sticking around to the end of my talk. So, so we've got things to celebrate. But one of the things that I've recently learned as I was taking my courses, especially on nutrition, is that, hey, we've got an obesity problem. And I don't think I needed to take a course to learn that, right? I think we all know that, especially in the modernized world, but not just the modernized world, right? The Western world, the developing world, obesity is increasing. And there's a statistic that had something, I forget if it was like about half of the population, for sure, in the United States is obese. And we're talking major problems with, whenever a person is obese, there are a lot of health problems. And this is not, I don't want to shame anyone in this. And the thing is, it's like I say in my book, if you want to sit on the couch and eat potato chips and ice cream all day, it's not that you're a bad person, and it's not like there's anything wrong with you. That's literally like your programming saying, well, okay, I've got my sodium needs, I've got my carbohydrates, there's sugars, there's some proteins here, right? Ultimately, the way that we live and the way that humans have lived for the vast majority of human history are completely different. They're completely different. And if you think about it, when it comes to this exercise thing, when it comes to exercising, it wasn't but just about in the past 50 or 60 years that we even started thinking, you know what? We need to exercise. We need, in the Western world, up until that point, you were exercising all the time. You were active. You're walking around. your job was active. You came home and everything was active there. There was no internet. There was no, social media or anything like that. At some point they invented the television, but they only had so much. I mean, my 6-year-old is blown away whenever we go to some place that all they have is TV, right? In my home, we don't pay for television. We just, we'll have we'll watch stuff on YouTube, or we'll watch stuff on one of the video channels like a Netflix or an Amazon or whatever. And he places there's television. He's like, well, why can't we watch this one show that I want to watch? I'm like, well, and you see, that's not how television works. You've just got so many options. And even within my lifetime, I remember, whenever I would get up incredibly early, and if I would turn the TV on way early, the TV station wasn't on yet. Do you guys remember this? Whenever you'd wake up, if you woke up really early or if you're up really late at night, like literally the TV channel said, sorry, see you tomorrow, right? We didn't have all of this passive entertainment. And so what's happened is, in the past so many years, is that we've done a great job at eliminating the calorie problem, right? We've done a great job of being able to say, hey, we're not starving anymore. And we've done a great job of eliminating threats from predators, right? Whenever someone gets attacked by a mountain lion, it makes national news. It's the kind of a headline because it doesn't happen very often, right? You don't get mauled by bears anymore. I mean, technically, yes, there are so many people that die every year of a bear attack. Yes, I get that. And, my heart goes out to you. But we don't get that so much these days. What we get are these other things that people, for the vast majority of human history, never would have experienced. So type 2 diabetes and gout were things that in the old, even like, for instance, like in the second, let's see, first and second millennia. So we're talking like some of the Khans in Mongolian history, or in some of the kings and queens in Western history. They would have gout, or they would have type 2 diabetes, and they didn't really understand how this all worked, of course, back then. But they would sometimes call these things the ailments of the kings, and literally these are ailments that generally come from eating and drinking, and they're lifestyle things generally, and they're not all the time, but generally this is how you have these issues, and these are lifestyle things that we see the average person suffering from today. And it's not, and I think the conversation all too often goes to this moralistic, hey, you're killing yourself, or you don't care, and you're fat and you're bad. I think or at least that, I think, is the reason why so few people are open to saying, hey, maybe I should rethink my lifestyle a little bit, because I think a lot of times we bring this moralistic point of view into it. But it doesn't have to be that way. And ultimately, we're this group, this channel, this tribe, we're trying to say, okay, I understand that there are ailments, there are issues that are endemic to the modern world. How can I counteract those things so that I can live happy and healthy? And of course, we talk about diet, exercise, things like that. Those are things that we've had to add back to our lives, right? We've had to add those things back. They were once part of our life. It was very difficult for the vast majority of human history. This biology, this beautiful miracle that we walk around in, was built for times of scarcity, and it was built for being very physically active. Our ancestors were incredibly strong. And I got to say, if you're hearing this, or if you're seeing this right now, your ancestors were the most successful ones, right? Your ancestors are the ones that survived long enough to procreate. Hey, we come from good stock. Are you familiar with that phrase? You come from good stock. Well, hey, our ancestors are the ones that survived, and they survived long enough to procreate and send that genetic information to the future. And that's where we are now. But the issue is that genetic information on how to survive, it's within us, right? We've got the same, what I like to call the same make and model, right? It's the same make and model that we're walking around in, that if you went back to a human being, 20,000 years ago, it was the same make and model, same basic structure. And so our eating habits, our exercise habits, I think most of us kind of understand, okay, there is a disconnection there. We're having to add back scarcity and exercise into our life, right? If we know that if we just eat until our eyes are crossed, we're harming ourselves. And we know, even though I would prefer sitting on the couch all night and all day and all night eating potato chips, ultimately that is going to harm me. And if I get up and I exercise each day, I eat, a healthy diet, I'm going to do something good for myself. And what we're doing is we're replicating, in a modern sense, we're replicating our natural lifestyles, the things that go along with our genetics. And this is because that's how our species developed all of those years, right? So here we are in the year 2021, and we're having these issues, right? But we're also having these issues of just incredible amounts of anger. We're having these issues of distrust, fighting, just a lot of depression, anxiety. And, without sitting you down on the couch and all these things, let's think about what this also is. And this is stuff I explain in my book, but hey, we're talking about it. So let's talk about it a little bit. Ultimately, when we think about these issues of anxiety, of stress, these are aspects of our physiology and psychology that are actually originally there to help us survive. And I know that's hard to believe, right? Like how many people can relate to this? I know I can relate. Most of my life was like this. And this is one of the reasons why I've been on this journey for so long, and why I need breath work, why I need nutrition, why I need exercise, why I need meditation, why I need all of these biohacks and things like that. I need them so bad because I am I'm a warrior. I'm a worrier. I'm also a warrior, right? I'm a warrior now, but I used to just be a worrier. And you go to sleep, and then 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, you wake up and you can't go back to sleep because you're worried about something that for some reason you felt okay about whenever you went to bed, but now it's just dominating your thoughts and you can't sleep. And actually, if you looked at your biological state, you're producing adrenaline, you're producing cortisol, all of these stress hormones are high in your body, and you're just laying there trying to go to sleep without any luck, right? You're just like, maybe I can dope myself to sleep, but you know that if you do that, you're not going to get a very good night's sleep. You're probably going to oversleep. So you're just kind of stuck. And this is where breath work, this is where mindfulness practices, this is where all of this really is a huge tool. But the thing is, what is that? Let's go back and let's just say, what is it? What is it? Why is that something that we have in our psychology? Why? And ultimately, it comes back to, these are things that for our ancestors were amazing. For our ancestors, these things kept us from, sleeping where there were snakes. It kept us from not planning ahead for the winter. And it kept us from it kept us alive. Worrying, right? This desire, which is a dopamine fed system in our motivational network, part of our brains. So we have this part of our brain called the motivational network, and it tells the brain what we should care about. And because it says, hey, you should care about this, it feeds you dopamine. And that dopamine says, hey, you need to get up and start worrying about this, or you need to get up and start doing something about this. So dopamine is great, right? It actually is a wonderful, beautiful thing. It keeps us motivated. It makes us, and dopamine is ultimately responsible for humanity's desire to explore. And this is something beautiful. And Rye, if you're on, Rye is a friend of the show. And he's on the Patreon club. He and I share a love for Star Trek. Yes. Okay. I do have some nerd parts about me. And some of you are like, some, yes. Okay. Maybe I nerd out now and then, but okay. But ultimately the desire for exploration is a dopamine fed system. And it's what has allowed, and if you think about this, if you think about primitive humans, and not even, I shouldn't even say primitive humans. I should say humans who lived, 10, 20,000 years ago, and you were in a small tribe. What is better, staying here or going over that mountain peak, over that hill to the next place? Because guess what? If I go over there, I know what's here. I know the things that are here. But if I go over there, there might be new resources. There might be better hunting grounds, a better place to farm. There might be, over that hill, there could be another tribe. There could be another tribe with another group of people who have knowledge and maybe who have potential mates that we can join together. So there's a lot of benefit to this system, and this dopamine system in our brains. It's gotten us to this point, but ultimately the problem is this desire for exploration is also what is fueling our desire to constantly check our Twitter, to constantly check our Instagram. We're desiring to look to see, because we want to solve the problem. We want to know what's across that pond or what's over there on the other side of the mountain. And in our own way, because we don't do this because we're stationary individuals, right? Humanity is no longer hunter and gatherer tribes that go around looking for resources. We typically live in one place. And so our exploration is now through these means of communication. And it's wonderful. It's great. It connects us. It's awesome. But it's also led to a lot of problems. And we know this because look at everybody, right? Look at how much discord we see amongst human beings on this planet. This is why kindness is so important, because as I've said before, your kindness informs other people how they should feel, right? The way you're behaving, the way we behave, the way we react to stress and danger and all these things, it informs us on how we should, other people should also be doing it, right? Because we're social creatures and we look to other people for cues as to how should I respond to this situation? How, this guy seems like he's not very scared. Maybe we're fine. Maybe we're okay. Or this guy's freaking out. Maybe there's something going on here that I need. Maybe he knows something I don't know, right? Ultimately, kindness, whenever you're acting with kindness, with a level head, you're not only doing that for yourself, but it makes an impact for society. And this is where that human condition, that modern human condition, where we have an important role to play, because we understand that we need diet and exercise, right? We understand that the food that we eat, because it's so divorced from the foods that our biology adapted to live for those tens of thousands of years of human history, right? We could just say that. Because of that, we try to adapt our diet so that it actually works with our genetics as opposed to just satisfies the urges, right? We also understand that genetically and physiologically, we're not going to crave exercise and exertion in the same way as we would food. And those of you who have a great exercise program, you know that you do crave exercise because you get all these endorphins and happy chemicals from doing it. But ultimately, a lot of people avoid exercise because it hurts or because they get sore or because it makes them tired, right? And so these are the things we know, and we've understood these things for decades now. We have to put these back into our lives. But moving to the year 2021, the modern human condition, also, we have to understand that our brains are wired in a way that when it comes to all of this information that we have access to, all of the social media, all of these things, it ultimately puts us into a place where we may feel, even while we're sitting in our chairs, like we're being chased by a lion. We may have all of the same emotions and physiological responses because we don't understand how our psychology and our physiology relate to, there's a disconnection. There literally is a disconnection. And I think one of the best examples is the fact that we can now have daylight any time of day, right? We can turn the sun on and off, right? We understand that LED lights or just lights in general affects our circadian rhythms. We're starting to understand that now. And it's starting to affect a lot of aspects of our lives. That's not the only thing, right? Lots of things. If you read James Nestor's book, he talks about our teeth for years, right? But now we're starting to put this together, and this is what I call the modern human condition. Now, this is where breathwork comes into play, and this is why we have the Breath Club. This is why we do what we're doing right now. This is why we do Wim Hof Method, when we vivation, when we do pranayama. We are communicating to our brains. We're communicating to our physiology. And this is the beauty of breath, is that it is a way for us to take back that control. We have to be more aware of our physiology and psychology as modern humans than any other time. No other generation before us had to be so aware, because we're getting all these mixed signals from our environment, and it's conflicting with our physiology. But here's the good thing. When we practice breath work, we can send the right signals through, right? So our autonomic nervous system is always listening to our breath. Now, that means also that our breath can cause us to be more anxious and nervous. It can also cause us to be more relaxed. It depends on how we're breathing. And this is why we learn how to do breath work. This is why breath work is so important. And this is why, seriously, just right now, everybody listening to this, everybody, let's just take a nice deep breath in through the nose, just nice and deep and slow. Fill all the way up. Smile at the top and just let it out nice and slow. Right? And just notice that one little thing influenced the way you feel. Just one breath. And so when we practice different techniques, when we are aware of our breath throughout the day, when we train our breath, when we learn how to breathe with proper breath mechanics, I still have this. Every time I teach my breath mastery class, I do a full diagram of the full breath mechanism and all the muscles we use and how all this stuff works. By the way, my next cohort of the 6-week breath mastery course is starting October 7th. Head over to jessecoomer.com to check that out. That is a deep dive into breath work. And I tell you what, I'm going to speak to a lot of these questions that I'm getting today, but I will say this. If you really want to have a complete and a deep understanding of how breathing works and how your breath ultimately influences your autonomic nervous system and how you can use that, right? Because I think a lot of times we're like, okay, it affects our autonomic nervous system. What does that do? And how do I know it's doing the thing that I want it to do, right? So I teach that in the 6-week breath mastery course. And I've already, the cohort is already filling up. We don't actually have a limit as far as how many people can join, but I do generally cap them off eventually, somewhere around 50 people. I don't really want, what the goal is, I want people to be able to talk to each other and get to know each other. And the cool thing is once the cohort starts, we close it. So you can't join late. It's literally, boom, you got to start with the class and we move together through it. So anyway, that's what's coming up there. But overall, that is when it comes to the modern human condition, that's what I'm talking about. And I think it's so important to understand that we're all experiencing this modern human condition. And modernity has brought us wonderful things. It's the reason why we can communicate today. It's the reason why most of us found breath work in the first place, right? Or nutrition, or, I mean, just think about the proliferation of information on a massive scale. And that's a beautiful thing. That's something that the average human being has not had access to any other time in history. And many of you guys are old enough to remember the time before the internet. I know I am. I didn't get the internet into my home until I was 18 years old. 18 years old. That's pretty much half of my life. I didn't have internet access. And so the amount of information the average person has access to is amazing. However, as we talked about last week, a lot of it's garbage information too. So now we have to be careful about what we're putting into our mouths, also what we're putting into our brain. So guys, okay, so let's talk about this. If you have any questions, please feel free. Also, the super chats are on. So if you want to make sure that your question gets answered, I'd be happy to skip straight to your question. Bear with me just a second. Hydration is also important. I'm going to take a little sip here. All right. So, and by the way, happy Friday, guys. This is always one of my favorite parts of the weekend. So I had a question. Let's see. Is your name Chow, or is it, I'm probably going to pronounce it incorrectly. Mr. Gabriel, my friend, I can at least pronounce your last name correctly. And he says, hey, for athletes, does it make sense to increase the BOLT score over time? and use breathing techniques to activate the sympathetic nervous system on time before competitions or training? I ask because I think the bolt presupposes increasing CO2, while I think that the breath to activate the sympathetic when exhaling would decrease CO2, right? Would working with both approaches be physiologically conflicting? Okay, so I'm going to try to unpack that a little bit there, my friend, and then we're just going to talk about that. So, for instance, when we talk about the BOLT score, so that's the body oxygen level testing. So that's Patrick Mckeown thing that comes from the Oxygen Advantage. And that's a great book. Patrick Mckeown is one of the he's a real treasure in the world of breathwork. I'm really grateful to that guy. And a lot of my friends in the breathwork world, they work with him, and they've said he's just a really brilliant guy. And I got to say, the things I've read from him and a lot of the interviews I've seen him in, yeah, he's just a really incredibly intelligent person. And what you're talking about is basically trying to increase your BOLT score. And that's a great thing. CO2 tolerance training is one of the things that I train people in when they're athletes. It's also something that it typically is the hardest thing for a person to do. And it's because CO2 tolerance training, if you're doing it the right way, okay, and this is one of those things where it's actually sometimes hard for people to learn to CO2 tolerance train and improve their BOLT score, but literally get a good coach and they'll teach you well. But ultimately, your BOLT score, if you improve your BOLT score, that's going to improve. Typically, it's going to improve just about everything. That's going to be a great boost to your athletic performance. Now, whenever you're talking about doing things to increase your sympathetic nervous system before competition, that's one where it depends. And so CO2 tolerance, just across the board, is a good thing. How to increase your CO2 tolerance? There's a few different methods, a few different techniques. And so if you're not familiar with how to do that, in my book, I talk about how to do it. I've got my course that I give you a really solid way to do it. The Buteyko technique is another one that's really good. And that's what Oxygen Advantage essentially is based off of. And they're all working with the same physiology. So I mean, there's no one right way to do it. But ultimately, that's a good thing pretty much no matter what. When it comes to activating your sympathetic dominant system, that can backfire on a person. So the reason for that is it depends, and it would really depend on you. And this would be one of those things where I'd want to work with you, and I'd want to know a few things about you. I'd want to watch you breathe. I'd want to understand your mental state, and ultimately I'd want to understand what sport you're playing. So that is going to it'll vary when it comes to sympathetic activation. And for those of you guys who are unfamiliar with what the sympathetic activation would be, that's the things that boost your adrenaline. So those are the types of techniques that would be used specifically for activating your physiology and increasing your adrenaline and stress hormones. So this can be good, and it can also be bad. It's really, there's no way to answer that question without working with you specifically and knowing your individual needs. All right. And Brandon Jackson, nice to have you here, my friend. Lee Wilson, hey, good to have you here. Papa Geek, always nice to have you. John Lindsay, okay, John. I hope you're still here. Okay, so John asks about the cold training book. So this has been, here's what's going on in my world, okay? Right now, as we speak, there are in the works 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 online courses that I'm involved with producing right now. One of them is a version of the 6-week breath mastery course, but it's not the cohort style where we do it live. It'll be the kind where it's all pre-recorded and you can do it on your own pace. Okay, so there's one. The other 2, I'm working with PhDs, a couple doctors. One is going to be focused on longevity, life extension, nutrition, and really focused in that area. The other is going to be focused in a style that I've been working for over a year now with a physical therapist. We've been working on creating a specific technique, and it's a program that we've built, and it's kind of secret stuff now. But I've been working on this stuff now for a while. So I've been, instead of working on publishing my cold training book in a paperback, I've been working on these online courses, which some of you guys in the Patreon club will be receiving an access code so you can be in the beta testing group. So not everybody will I be able to give access to the beta test group for some of these, but some of you guys in the Patreon club, you'll get the beta. You'll still have to pay to do it, but it's going to be but basically it's you're going to get lifetime access to this. So you're in the beta test, you'll tell me what you think. I'll want to get some feedback from you. And then all of the changes, you'll be able to have all the changes and updates and everything because you'll already have lifetime access to it. So that is what I've been working on. And so the book, the cold training book, has taken a back seat to that. And I want to apologize, John, and anybody else who's been waiting for that paperback. The issue here is I'm left with a decision. Do I just go ahead and publish because right now I've got the ebook version of this is out there. It's been out there for a while. Last year I updated it to the second edition. So I could just publish that. It's very good. It's very worth publishing. It would be very much worth the money to buy it paperback. And I could do that, or I could wait and after I finish all of these online courses, which all of these things should be out by the latest first of the year 2022, I could go back at that time and revise the cold training book and then come out with it maybe March or April 2022. It's a tough decision to make. And maybe I'll do a poll. Maybe I'll put a poll on the YouTube channel and you guys can tell me what you think I should do. I mean, I could always publish the current edition and then publish a revised edition later. But the problem is you can do that with an ebook and everyone gets an automatic update. That's cool. But if you do that with a paperback, if you buy the first edition that comes out on paperback and I come out with a revised edition, then you have to buy it again in order to get the updates. So I'm vexed. I am confused. I don't know what I should do. If anybody has a suggestion, I'm very all ears. I want everything that I ever put out, I want it to be the best I can do. That's something, it goes back to everything I've said about what we put out into this world. It's not just, there's so many reasons why we want to do our best. So many reasons why we want to show up. So many reasons why we want to be kind, when we want to put the kind of energy into the world that we want the world to have. And so I want it to be the best I can possibly do. I know that the current edition is the best I can do as of last year, September, but I think there's a few more tweaks, especially I want to talk if there's a few more things I want to talk about, especially as far as like some of the dangers of cold training and things like that are not in the book yet that I'd like to put in there. So that's the answer. I will keep working on that. And Gabriel, it's your mom's birthday? Awesome. Well, tell her happy birthday. It's also the birthday of the channel. Awesome. Let's see here. All right. Let's see. I'm so glad you guys are here. Hey, Ian, I'm glad you're here, my friend. Thank you for being here. If you guys have questions, we're going to bring it up. I'm having a great time. I got to say, now next week, I'm not going to be able to do my YouTube live or this podcast. In other words, I will be training the military, and I'm going to be training. I don't know if I'm even supposed to tell anybody about some of the people I'm going to train. I'm actually going to have to go do the training, and then I'll probably have to ask, can I tell the people who I'm training? I know I can't take any pictures. I won't be able to take any pictures or anything like that to share. It's going to be kind of cool stuff. So I've been invited to train some of the military. So I'm going to be teaching them how to breathe. And then, so I won't be doing my podcast for the next 2 weeks because I'll have 2 trainings that I'm going to be doing. And then I'll be back every week. All right, let's get to some other questions here. C asks, do you release adrenaline with Wim Hof breathing? Yeah. What about it makes you release it? Is it the low oxygen or the low CO2? And people say dopamine is the happiness hormone, but it's more about motivation. Let's see here. So, okay, there's a lot to unpack there that, I don't actually have time to unpack all of that. But yeah, you do produce adrenaline whenever you practice Wim Hof Method correctly. And this is one of those things where, it all comes down the answer, sadly enough, is a lot of it depends. But if you're practicing Wim Hof Method correctly, you will release some adrenaline. That's for sure. And whenever it comes down to why you're releasing adrenaline, you're activating your sympathetic dominant system. Okay. So, you're in the pathways you do that, there's multiple different ways you're doing that. Dopamine, they say dopamine is the happiness hormone, but it's more about motivation. You're right. The happiness hormone is serotonin. Dopamine, it makes you feel it's technically a reward neurotransmitter, but it's not the kind of reward neurotransmitter that people think it is. People always act like, oh, I did this thing, so I got the dopamine hit. And that's not how it works. You get the dopamine hit, then you do the thing. It's the weird, so it's not like when we think about a reward chemical, we think, oh, you get the reward after you do the thing. No, that's not how dopamine works. Dopamine gives you the reward, but it's basically rewarding you for doing it activates you. In other words, it makes you need to do something. So dopamine can really make your life a living hell, really. Dopamine is probably the biggest reason why right now, the average person is awash in dopamine. The average person has so much more dopamine than any other time in history, just because we have so many more places that we feel like we don't understand or have control over. Because you got to remember, one of the things, ultimately, dopamine it's encouraging you to take action, and it's encouraging you to eliminate uncertainty. So think about this. Dopamine encourages you to eliminate uncertainty. Now, okay, think about how much uncertainty you might have had if you were a hunter-gatherer, right? Well, of course, there's some uncertainty. I don't know where my food is coming from, so I need the dopamine to eliminate that uncertainty. That's very helpful, very useful. It gives me the motivation to move forward and search out that thing that I need to eliminate. Well, once I found my food, I don't have that uncertainty anymore. I guess I'll hang out in here and eat. Okay, great. What a wonderful life. What a wonderful, peaceful life. Okay, I'm going to go to sleep. Dopamine. Dopamine says I need to make sure there's no snakes or spiders or creepy crawling things that could kill me during the middle of the night. I need to make sure I'm safe. Okay. Make sure I'm safe. I've got a safe place to go to sleep. Cool. I'm safe. Awesome. So now I can go to sleep. And not only have I checked to make sure there's no snakes, but there's a tribes member who naturally has a chrono clock. For those of you who are not familiar, a chrono clock is your natural habits of sleep patterns. So if you're a night owl, right? Some people are naturally a night owl. Some people are more like just the average person. You prefer waking up around 7, going to bed around 10. And there's some people that are morning people who you prefer waking up early and going to bed early. That's chrono clocks. Your chrono clocks, we believe now that this is comes down from our heritage. And if you've got whatever chrono clock you've got, like the vast majority of us have the 7 to 10 chrono clock, because we were the people that during the daytime, you went and hunt and gathered. But there were some people that stayed up and watched out at night, and some people took over their shift to watch out and make sure, there were no animals or invading, other tribes. And so ultimately, the dopamine thing wasn't a big problem. It was a boost to our survival. It really helped us survive for the vast majority of human history. But think about how much uncertainty there is today, right? So dopamine is here to reward us. It's to prompt us to eliminate uncertainty. How much uncertainty is there today? Just think about this. How much uncertainty could there have been when there was no mass communications? There was only about 12 to 15 people you knew because that's your tribe. Okay, where am I getting my food? How am I going to mate and procreate? Am I safe? Safety issues. There's only so many things you could worry about. And now there's so much more uncertainty. There's so much uncertainty that you deep down know that there's probably something you should know about that you don't know about, right? Better check. Better, right? Just think about that. And just think about the proliferation of news. How many things do we need to know about? And I'm not saying it's a bad thing to know what's going on. I look at the news all the time too. Okay. I'm not constantly looking at the news. I'm not a news person like some people I know are just addicted. And I think we all know that person who you go over to their house or you talk to them and all they want to talk about is politics or world news. That's everything. That's all they have to say. And ultimately, that's the dopamine hit, right? The dopamine saying, I better check the news to find out what's going on. I better find out what all these things are going on. But now even more so, this is another thing that sadly enough, we've fallen prey to our own advancements. There are some things that we cannot know. It's just not knowable. There are some things you cannot eliminate all uncertainty. Now, we've never been able to eliminate all uncertainty, right? We've always had uncertainty, but now we have more uncertainty. And you can't, and even though there's more information now than any other time before, there's also more answers now to those things. So you can't really get a straight answer. You can't really find out, well, what is the answer to this? And we want the answer. And your motivational network in your brain, it says you must find the answer. And you can't sleep until you know the answer. And it's affecting our lives. It's affecting how we communicate with other people. It puts us in a defensive posture. So that fight or flight, that sympathetic dominant system, it keeps us there because we might have to jump into action because we're in this uncertain state. And of course, when we're in that state of fight or flight, we're in that state of go or no go. We're not in a state of even listening. We're not in a state of contemplating. We're not in the creative mind. We're not in a mind that might even be open to someone else's ideas because we're constantly, right? And so oftentimes we just fall prey to our own confirmation bias and we pick a tribe, we pick a team. And we're like, yeah, I'm with them. Yeah, right? We get tribal in a bad way. Like I always call this group the tribe, right? Everybody in my Patreon club, the Breath Club, everybody, if you're a fan of the channel, we're in a tribe, and in a good way, right? In a family type of way. But we can also be tribal in other ways that are just like, it just leads to conflict. And so dopamine is one of these interesting things that what's weird. What's also strange is there are some people who have low levels of dopamine, very few, but for some people it's a very big problem. And you'll see these issues of lack of motivation, lethargy, and all those things too. But ultimately, most of us have the opposite problem. Most of us are awash. We are drowning in dopamine, and it's driving us crazy as a species. So this is where breathwork comes into play. This is how we can, for those of you guys who are, who practice breathwork, and I assume that's this audience, that's where we can say, okay, I am in this dopamine feedback loop. I am being stressed out to the max because there's the whole world's full of uncertainty. And I've got to say, guys, I don't think it's controversial to say that as of today, like current day, the world is more unsure than ever, right? There's more unknowns than ever. There's more, there are fewer things that we can actually say, I know this for a fact, than ever before. And so we oftentimes, in order to avoid this dopamine feedback loop, we just say, I'm going to go with this group. I don't like this dopamine feedback loop. I want it to stop because it's trying to get me to solve the problem, but I don't feel like I can solve the problem. So rather than stay in this state of flux, I'm just going to stop thinking about it. I'm going to pick a side, or I'll pick some, guru or leader or whomever to follow. And then I'll just think what they tell me to think. And if you're a friend of the channel, I'm never like that. I don't want that. So that I think all of us fall prey to that often. I mean, I know I do. I've fallen prey to that lots of times. A person I really like, so they say something, I'm like, okay, all right. And then I start thinking, maybe I should think for myself a little bit. So anyway, that was a little rant on dopamine. That was a great question, C. I appreciate that question. Well, let's see here, guys. And if you want to make sure I get to your question today, go ahead and make sure to hit that. Let's see the super chats, but we'll just keep going down the line here and see what's happening. Happy Friday, Brandon. Let's see, Ian. Let's see. Wait a minute. C also asked thoughts on Patrick McKeown. I already pretty much talked about him. So good guy. So Ian King says, thank you for all the sessions you've guided me through on Patreon. Awesome, Ian. Yes, you've really opened my mind beyond Wim Hof Method. Wim Hof Method is a fantastic thing, Ian. It's what got me started into breathwork, but there is so much more. There's so much. And the thing is, every breath we take, right? Every single breath we take counts for something. Every single breath we take does something. And so this is an amazing, beautiful gift that we have, the ability to use our breath to influence how we feel and how we behave. And there's so much out there and it's added so much to my life. So I'm so happy to share it. Love my Patreon crew. We've got it, sometime I'm going to do a retreat or something, and the Patreon group will get like some insane discount just because I want to make sure, I want us all to get together sometime. If you're in the Patreon group, we do Zoom calls every month, and you can kind of see other people from around the world breathing together. It's so cool. Let's see, Papa Geek, how did you come in contact with the military, and what will you teach them? They reached out to me. So I was contacted, and I'll be teaching them a lot of different techniques. Basically a condensed version. So a condensed version of my 6-week breath mastery course is what I'll be teaching them. And after I get done, and I don't want to say a whole lot more because ultimately I don't want to get in trouble. So after I get back and they tell me what I can tell people, I'll tell you more about that, Papa Geek. So hey, thanks for that question. Ian says, what techniques gives you the biggest rush like you get with Wim Hof Method? Here's the thing. So Ian, this is one of those things where, like, how I think we all, okay, here it is. I love music, right? And I wear this shirt on the channel all the time. I'm a big Led Zeppelin fan. Okay. So huge Led Zeppelin fan. But I don't want to listen to Led Zeppelin all the time. Right. I don't, even as much as I'm like, dude, these guys were rock gods, right? I don't want to listen to them all the time. It gets old, and there's other things out there. So, I'll put on Led Zeppelin 2. My favorite Led Zeppelin album, by the way, is 2. Am I wrong? And if you say there's another one that's better, they're all awesome. I think Led Zeppelin 2 it's my favorite. Okay. But having said that, I can listen to that, get goosebumps when I'm listening to whatever song. And then I'll switch over to, Beastie Boys. I love the Beastie Boys. Oh my God. And then I'll switch over to this other group or that group or whatever. and I've played some songs on this channel. You know the kind of music I like. I love, 90s alternative, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam. And I'll go through phases where I'm like, man, this is absolutely my jam right now. This is what is really getting me those goosebumps. It's really giving me what I want. And that's how it is with breath work. And if you're in the Patreon club, and Ian, you are, usually this is how it works, Ian. Have you noticed that over time, the styles that I incorporate into the guided sessions, they vary. And you'll notice that, oh, he must be really into this now. Oh, now he's switching over to this. Because if you joined early on, a lot of it was counting, and a lot of it was had to do with cadences. I'm a huge cadence fan, right? So basically, when you're talking cadence, it's okay. So I can, as a breath worker, I can basically, if I have you breathe in and hold and let go and hold and do all these other things, I can pretty much decide what your autonomic nervous system is going to do. And I can put you in an amazing state by doing that. I'm a huge fan of doing that. I lead sessions all the time like that. But then you'll notice, Ian, there'll be times whenever I'm doing this other technique a lot. Oh man. And then lately I've been doing a lot of Kriyas with you. So I'm a huge fan of Sudarshan Kriya. I think it's a great technique. And I've done that in a lot of retreats. If you go to some of my retreats, I'll lead that too. Vivation is another one. I mean, there's so many good ones, right? So but guess what? I still do Wim Hof Method too. So Bastrika, man, sometimes I'll get in a really good groove with Bastrika or Kapalabhati. So different forms of pranayama. So I think breath work is so amazing. And it's this thing that it's such a part of my DNA now. Like I've been doing it now for years. I've led thousands of people through it. And it's still, the Japanese have a saying, or at least I've been told this, that there's a word called ikigai. And I recently learned this from Paul Hughes, who is one of my new acquaintances in breathwork. And ikigai is essentially the reason why you get up in the morning, your purpose, the thing that gets you up. And sharing this with the world is my ikigai. I don't know. I didn't get into it thinking I would get this deep into it, but here I am. That was a great question. Thank you for that question, my friend. Daniel Fuller. Oh my God. Hey, brother. Good to see you. Let's see what you got to say. Family member of mine. And guys, I'm going to have to jump off of here pretty soon. And so I want to thank everybody for listening. If you're listening to the podcast, and also for being here, but I'll go a little bit longer. Let's take a look at this. A family member of mine was diagnosed with lung cancer. I think that's what you're saying. He's going to be on oxygen for the rest of his life after the surgery to remove a piece of the lung. He also has bad COPD. Okay. Sorry to hear that, my friend. Have you worked with someone in this situation? What technique would you recommend, if any? Okay. So this is an interesting question. So I have worked with a lot of different people, and what I have found over the years is that it seems like I've never worked with two people who have the same situation. I've worked with people who've had asthma. I've worked with people. One thing, here's just a side note, and then I'll get onto this in a second, Daniel. But one thing that's funny, I've been working with a lot of people who have phobias lately. Like phobias, especially the one that I've been working with people the most lately is the phobia of driving on the highway. So, and this is actually seems to be relatively common. It's the feeling like once you get on the highway, you get claustrophobic. You're really afraid of 18-wheelers, like the semi trucks, and it just causes a panic breakdown. And so, but even though I've worked with a lot of people with that specific phobia, every single person with that phobia has been different. And we've worked out plans and programs in different ways. And so I guess this is one way for me to say, Daniel, that I would have to work with that person on a very individual basis to really be able to give any advice. I would want to do like, for instance, if you've ever been a client of mine, or if you would like to become a client of mine, I don't really have many openings now, but my clients know that I like to do a lot of testing early on. I want to do a complete functional breath assessment. I want to look at, I do want to look at maybe not necessarily your Bolt score, but I'm going to look at a lot of these different gas exchange issues. Is similar to the Bolt score. I'll test you there too. I'm going to test a lot of things. And then based off of that, then generally we'll do some tests with the person to see how they respond. So it's such a difficult one to kind of give just like a general answer to. I would say, this is one of those things where I'm not sure if there are underlying causes for these issues. Obviously, if he's a smoker, obviously stop smoking and things of that nature. The other thing would be nasal breathing for just about everyone is essential. But I am not a pulmonologist. I am very, very close friends with a pulmonologist. I'm a pulmonaut, not a pulmonologist. And so I nerd out with him a lot, and we love to talk about this stuff. But it would be something where I would need to know a lot more information. I'd need to know the person, and I need to test that person. So I don't want to give anything general, and then someone hears this and then they're like, well, this is what Jesse says to do, because this is one of those things, again, everyone's different, and I'd want to get really deep. Daniel, feel free to reach out to me. If I really don't have a whole lot of slots open. I don't know if I have any slots open, but Daniel, I think you're in the Patreon club. If you want to message me, maybe I'll be able to give you a little bit more guidance, but I normally need to meet with the person and really get to know that person. But thank you for that question. Okay. What time is it? Okay, I got to get out of here in just a minute, but I think I'm almost done with the questions. So awesome. Thank you for all these questions, guys. Ian says, like, for me, I fully admit I state chase. I like how you put that. I want to go as deep as possibly I can. I'm searching for something. Well, Ian, so what you're saying is you're looking for something that's altered state, probably. So there's different ways you can get to that altered state. I teach in my 7-week or my 6-week breath mastery course. I take people through an altered breathwork experience. And that is using what I call the microdose. I don't like, and here's something I don't like when people do, they try to teach DMT breathing or altered state breathing on YouTube. I don't even know how many live group sessions where I've guided people through a altered state, like a psychedelic experience. And it's something that I will guide people. For instance, in the Patreon, I give you little tastes. I don't know if you've noticed that, the Patreon members, there's little tastes out there. Child's Dream. If you're in the Patreon club, go do Child's Dream. I love that one because it's a nice little taste of an altered state with an intention added to it. There's some other ones. I think Cosmic and let's see. There's so for those of you who are not in the Patreon club, I title all of my sessions. So I will write in the Patreon club. I write the session. I literally sit down and I think about, okay, what kind of sensations do I want them to feel? I put the music to it. Everything is really thought out. Let's see. So that's what, and I title all of them. Let's see. I think is it the Spring Blooms or Blooms of Spring? That one has a little bit of altered state in it in the Patreon club. But ultimately, I do a little bit, I teach a little bit of altered state in the 6-week breath mastery course at the very end. Okay. And it's kind of our graduation present. I put you through all state. And usually I even request have a person in the room with you whenever we do the altered state breath work. And this is because altered state breath work it's something that people, I don't think they really respect the fact that it's heavy medicine. It's really powerful. And while oftentimes you won't have some kind of out of your body, out of your mind experience, oftentimes it just feels really good and, oh, wow. Sometimes you will. And that can be very scary for a person, especially if you've not been guided through with an experienced breath worker one-on-one, with them in the room, physically present with you. So I do altered state with my 6-week breath mastery cohorts. I don't do it as deep as I would if you came to a live retreat or workshop with me. And that's because I'm a very safe person and I respect the medicine that I'm dispensing whenever I do that. And there's some people on YouTube that just a lot of times I don't necessarily think they respect the medicine quite as much as they should. And I'm not trying to be controversial here. It's just my own personal preference as a person. I'm trying to take responsibility. And I know that if I'm guiding someone through something, I want them to have a good, a very good experience. And I don't want to put anybody in a situation where they're worse off because they've listened to my guidance. So there is that. So much love to everybody on that topic. Okay, I'm just gonna shoot through a few more, and then I got to get out of here, guys. So, do you think self-healing is just maxing out on relaxation? If we relax fully, does that initiate healing, and why or why not do you think non-dual awareness is the bullseye of healing? I'm just gonna, I don't have time to really go in great depth, Gabriel Bosch, but thank you for that question. Let me just say this. It is a miracle that the body heals itself. And it is something that as far back as Hippocrates and even before, people have just been very much like blown away at the body's amazing capacity for self-healing. Ultimately, there is no surgeon, there is no medicine, there is nothing in modern science or esoteric science or any of these other things that causes healing to happen. It is you. It is within you and your body's amazing ability to heal. So it's an amazing thing. And ultimately, the vast majority of making it happen is getting out of the way, right? Is not further injuring ourselves and not trying to use our brain to say, hey, I know how to heal this better than my body knows how to heal it. Your body has an amazing internal wisdom and it knows how to do it. So getting out of your own way is ultimately the key. I just heard the lyrics of Every Breath You Take. Papa Geek. That's right. That's what I do half the time. I'm just quoting songs of the 80s and 90s. All right, last question, and then I got to get out of here. You've already C and Ian I've already answered questions from you guys. Let's see, both of you. Let's see, Ian. Yeah, when it comes to yes, there are many ways to go deeper than Wim Hof Method the breathing protocol. If you're thinking about having a psychedelic experience, yes, there are. C says thoughts on doing extending the inhales longer than 30 repetitions for Wim Hof. I like to do 60 and sometimes even 120, go really deep. My whole body vibrates. Okay. That works. Here's the thing. And like, there are ways that if what you're doing can really hurt you. there are ways that what you're doing can be awesome and the best possible thing, right? So just literally just telling me the number of breaths you're taking doesn't really give me the full picture. But I will say this, my friend. Okay, see, what you need to do is think about this. What am I trying to get out of this experience? That's ultimately the goal, right? What is my goal? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Am I doing it because so-and-so said to do it? Or am I doing it because the way it makes me feel is the way I want to feel, right? And so as long as your breath mechanics, you're not ruining those breath mechanics, as long as you're not ruining your breathing throughout the rest of the day, and you're being mindful and of your other breaths, and realizing that this breathwork session is only this one breathwork session and every other breath you take counts too. You are your own teacher, right? And so you have to kind of lean into that as well. Now, if you want to go super deep into that, if you want to go super deep into all of this stuff and learn the foundations of how this all works, take my 6-week breath mastery course, or you can watch out for my my online course that I'm coming out with in the near future. It's the standalone course. It's self-paced, but those are things that I'm putting out there so that you understand the underpinning. So when you understand like kind of like the foundations of how all breath work works and how these things interplay together, then oftentimes you're going to be like, oh, I see. It's not always just this factor. It's also all of these other, 5 different factors playing together. So there's a lot that comes into play. But see, thank you for that question. Guys, thank you guys, everybody, for being here on the live feed. And thanks for everybody that's been listening to this as in the audio format, as I do upload these to Spotify, iTunes, all of your favorite hosts for podcasts. Guys, thanks again. I am so full of gratitude for this audience. It's really a highlight of my week whenever I get to speak to you guys. Thanks for all the great questions. Thanks for sticking around for my thoughts on the modern human condition. Guys, thanks so much. Please like and subscribe. Join the Patreon club. Be kind. Just go be kind. Everyone that you see is in your family. Treat them like family. All right, guys, have a great weekend. I'll see you next time.